democracies tend to perhaps become too big, too large, unnecessarily so, and they support themselves with regulation that makes them even bigger and even more powerful. So having a check on excessive bureaucracies is certainly something which government should do. It's not easy because the bureaucrats, again, are very close to the government, and sometimes they hold knowledge and power that is difficult to dismantle. So certainly one thing that democracy should be doing is to make sure that they don't get conquered by bureaucrats that are career bureaucrats, and they are there all the time, and they are not elected, but they influence a lot.
The role of citizens in a democracy is a controversial matter. Citizens elect government. That's, everybody agrees, yes? They vote. Now, beyond that, they obviously cannot govern, yes? Because we live in a representative system.
A democracy is a system in which voters can get rid of governments without bloodshed. And that getting rid of those who are in public authority without bloodshed, that is, without uprising, without the costs and tragedy of violence, that is a fundamental virtue. So I would say, yeah, perhaps the people don't rule, but they do in a democracy, and that's perhaps a definition or a defining characteristic of democracy. People can kick out those in power.
And if the voters don't like him or her, they can throw her out. Yes. Which means that politicians, our representatives, have to anticipate the retrospective judgments of the voters. The fact that people can be voted out of office is, I think, extremely important for political life, for people's beliefs, and for their belief in democracy. So there's research in this, recent research in this country, which shows, for example, that mayors of Florida towns that experience shark attacks are more likely to be voted out of office. Now, they're obviously not responsible. Yes, it's not that. But when that happens, people are unhappy. When people are unhappy, they have a way of acting. They can throw the government out.
I am buying a package. I don't get a chance to buy every issue separately. Do you see the role of the party? That's the role of the party. It presents me with a package, the other party presents me with a package, and then I have to make a decision which package I like better.
We cannot organize democracy other than in terms of parties. Even if you have all the independent, single member, single district, no parties, okay? Then they have to come together. Whatever, but they're always groups. Otherwise you cannot make decisions. To make collective decisions, you have to form majorities. And parties do that.
Mass political parties represented real bits of society and linked very large numbers of people to the process of political choice in the legislature and in the choice of the executive. That structure has broken down over time, so that there's much less real connection between individuals who, have to vote or not bother to vote for their representatives, and those who claim to represent them, and there used to be.
Not pessimist about the institutions. I think these institutions, again, the fact that we elect governments, the fact that governments, they're somewhat corrupt, they sometimes abuse their power, they're more repressive than they should be.
I don't think there's going to be a rival to democracy which is going to push it aside. But what I do think is that democracy as a picture of something which is really happening to their lives from the point of view of most people is going to get less and less convincing and less encouraging unless we can actually work out more effective institutions for the political representation of the largest part of the population.
So you have enormous corporate power in this world that we're looking at over the next 50 years. And I see this as the great challenge for democracy.
I still remain hopeful because I think ultimately that the yearning that people have for more equal and democratic societies is very strong and very deeply rooted. I also believe that there's a possibility that as younger voters become more influential and as political leaders who are concerned about inequality become more skillful at mobilizing people, that we're going to see more action in these areas. If you had thought about this from the standpoint of someone who is thinking, are we going to see actions to address inequality in the 1920s, you would never have believed the kinds of changes that would have taken place in the 1930s.
In many countries outside of the richest one, corruption is a huge problem, and if you have corruption, you have the worst of all world, because the government follow the interest of their support, their few supporters, or even their themselves. They steal. So control of corruption is a very important factor, particularly for countries outside the few richest one. That would be a big issue for the future of democracies.
Das eine ist, dass in der Demokratie die Unterschichten, die Gewerkschaften, die Mittelschichten wieder sehr viel stärker mitmachen, sich demokratisch beteiligen und einen entsprechenden Druck auf die Regierungen, auf die Parlamente ausüben. Und das zweite ist dann, dass das Privateigentum, dass die Finanzmärkte vor allen Dingen reguliert werden, dass der Staat Bedingungen setzt, dass der Staat einen Rahmen setzt, ihnen Grenzen setzt. Und wenn das beides geschieht, dann ist am Ende der Markt noch da, der ist ja auch wünschenswert, Kapitalismus auch noch da, aber den Vorrang hat die Demokratie. Das ist möglich. Das muss wieder geschehen. Am besten transnational. Nicht nur in einem Land, sondern regional, etwa hier in der Europäischen Union oder in anderen Regionen.
Who owns the robots, the machines that make stuff, rules the world. And democracy to win means that we have to democratize the ownership of the robots. So we have to own, as workers in companies and as citizens broadly, the capital.
Sometimes ordinary citizens win big victories, and there's a lot of pushback against these powerful interests, and we've seen versions of this story before where democracy has gone through very challenging periods, and then voters have their say and people mobilize, and there's a shift like there was in the New Deal period, or if you think about something like the civil rights movement in the United States, where people who were politically powerless, completely politically powerless, found a way to move government in their favor.
You'll have political leaders, and we do today, in some parts of the world, who say we know better. But the idea of democracy is that no individual or group knows better than citizens themselves about what will make them have fulfilling lives. And the idea of democracy is that people can't achieve many of the things they need to achieve in their lives without working together. So democracy is based on the idea that we work together and that we have an important say in what our collective institutions do. So we could see democracy evolving in new directions based on those basic principles.
I mean, Americans will, in the next election, Americans will face presumably a candidate presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, which will announce and pursue policy geared toward reducing inequality, and a Republican candidate which will emphasize this problem much less, and they will have a choice, and we'll see what they choose. Same at the level of congressional elections, and same goes in Europe.
Well, you need social mobilization. First of all, you need people to vote. So a big part of the problem in the U.S. is that many people don't vote, and especially the people who are the biggest losers from the changes that have taken place, they don't vote. So higher voter turnout among those groups, I think, would make a difference.
What do you think? People say, democracy is need an alternative way in the future.
In the future?
Yeah, so what do you...
Up to the population.
Up to the population.